just on Aaron Gilmore.
Oh, sorry, let me just finish a couple of very quick things and then we'll get into that, I'm sure. So just in terms of Mighty River Power, it was obviously floated on Friday, 113,000 retail investors, making it the largest share registry on the NZX. It's also pleasing to see a large number of new investors who have taken part in the offer. Around 77,000 people who invested didn't have a CSN number, which indicates they're investing for the first time. The average application by New Zealand retail investors was $8,000, and well over one-third of applications, around 42,000, were for $2,500 or less, so small investors made up a large proportion of those who took part. The government's first float in the program has achieved what we set out to do: widespread New Zealand ownership, and over 85% of the company owned by New Zealanders. The government also banked proceeds from the sale of $1.7 billion, which will go into the future investment fund to buy new assets like modern schools, hospitals, and of course well over $500 million to the new hospital in Christchurch. That $1.7 billion is money the government doesn't have to borrow. Bill English will be announcing details of the next float as part of Thursday's budget. Next company to be partially sold will be an energy company, and we expect New Zealanders to be able to buy shares in it around October, subject to market conditions. As I mentioned, this Thursday, Finance Minister Bill English delivers his fifth budget, and which will continue the sensible economic management of the country through these challenging times and the work we're doing to build a more productive and competitive economy. And just in terms of the House this week, Government's looking to progress the Education Amendment Bill and the financial review debate on the performance and current operations of Crown entities, state enterprises and other public organisations. Wednesday's a Members' Day. In terms of ministerial activity, I'm here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Friday I'm in Auckland for a post-budget breakfast and lunch. And this weekend is the Central North Islands Conference in Rotorua. I'll be speaking on Sunday.
Just on Aaron Gilmore, sorry about before. Will he be allowed to make this valedictory speech or the statement of Parliament tomorrow if he's so keen to make?
Obviously that's subject to the will of the Parliament, but National will be supporting him in making that statement.
And there's some concern perhaps been raised about the content of his speech, that he's going to be using it as a bit of a revenge speech. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard that, no.
Are you concerned about that, and has anyone been talking with him to vet that speech?
No, I'm not concerned by that. He's free to put in the speech what he likes.
Has anyone been vetting that with him?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
He sent a text apparently to about half a dozen National Party members, none of them MPs, talking about this concept of utu or revenge. Are you concerned that perhaps this could be raised in his speech, or?
I'm not concerned. I haven't seen the text messages, but I've seen the media reports. And I mean, look, in the end, what I'd say is Aaron Gilmore made the right decision for him and his family. Really, that's kind of the end of the matter. I'm sure he'll have a statement he'd like to make tomorrow, put on the record his version of events or whatever comments he wants to make. But really, we're at the end of this process, not the start.
Isn't the fact that he's sending out this?
Isn't this a pretty clear message though that he's going out swinging?
I don't know if I can see it tomorrow, but I'm not terribly phased about it.
What of the fact that he's sending out this text message in the first place?
That's a matter of him. Like I've said, we're really at the end of the process, not the beginning.
Does it just strengthen the decision or the call that you made to talk to the party president?
Well, I'm comfortable with the decisions I made. I think in the end, Mr. Gilmore also made the right decision on his behalf, and really, it's the end of the matter.
Have you spoken to him?
No.
Is it further unbecoming conduct of a national MP though to be seen like that?
Well, like I say, it's really over, so there's not much point delving through it.
Why are you supporting him in making this speech?
Because I think he's, parliamentarians should be free to make a statement on the way out. They can either make a valedictory or they can make a personal statement. Either one is part of what happens when you're a member of Parliament. Any other member of Parliament leaving gets the right to make a valedictory. It's no different from Mr. Gilmore. He's chosen to resign. He's free to make that statement.
It's unusual though, isn't it, for a resigning MP who's only been in Parliament for 80 or so days.
Yeah, well, I think in fairness he's also been there prior to that for a number of years. So, 3 years. So, I mean, look, at the end of the day, he's free to make that statement.
Given his previous judgment over the last few weeks, are you comfortable with the fact that he'll be giving a speech, a very public speech in Parliament?
Well, as I said earlier, I'm more than happy for him to make that statement.
Would you encourage an MP though to make a speech and to kind of have some unveiling or revealing of names, which is kind of what he's
I haven't had any discussion with him, as I said, I'm at the end of the process, not the beginning of it.
What would you encourage an MP to use their delegatory speech to do?
That's a matter for him. It's a personal statement.
Were you surprised that MD released an official information request about his emails so quickly?
I wasn't really aware of those emails up until we obviously got the heads up. And I didn't see them actually until they literally were publicly released, so very shortly before I got the heads up, and the day before that was it. Look, they must have released them because they believed, I think they sought advice, that illegally were required to do so.
But normally they take, well, you have to wait 28 days.
You have to direct that then.
Are you sure there wasn't any ministerial involvement in the decision to speed it up?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
Are you pleased that Aaron Gilmore's resigned?
As I said, we're at the end of the process.
Are you looking forward to Claudia Coe to come into Parliament?
Yes, she'll add a new person to our caucus, a new dimension. She's got a colourful history, as we know. She's been proven as a broadcaster and communicator. I've sort of seen her over the years when she's been campaigning, and she'll be a good addition to the team.
Was Simon Lusk involved in Aaron Gilmore's?
As far as I'm aware, you could ask him.
What's the government's position on the food and schools proposal?
You mean Honi Harawire's bill?
Yeah.
We need to take it to caucus tomorrow, but it's highly likely we'll be voting against it. There is some merit, obviously, for food in schools, and the government's been supporting that in terms of a number of programs. Either we've worked alongside people like Kids Can, where the government's put in some money. Fonterra have been supportive of what they've been doing. So we're not arguing the case there, but there is a number of aspects of that bill that we're just not supportive of.
Will we see something to do with food in schools in this year's budget?
I can't rule that out, but I can't necessarily rule it in either.
So
we
what
could
is
see some sort of initiative where cause the funding isn't exactly huge. I mean, we could see something along those lines in the budget, could we?
Yeah, to wait and see.
you said you're opposed to some aspects. What aspects are they?
Firstly, I think the argument around his bill is that that's the way of solving all of those issues, and actually they're much more widespread and deep set than that. Secondly, it's talking about the provision of food, I think, in breakfast, lunch, and quite a comprehensive response. And thirdly, I don't think you necessarily need a legislative response. If you look at it, things like Fonterra and the work that they've been doing, or Kids Can, don't require a legislative response. That's our main.
Do you think the government, though, should help contribute to paying for lunches in school?
I think if you take a step back on the whole food issue, I raised that when I was leader of the opposition, and you can see the argument from both sides. I think you can see the argument that says, look, it's largely parental responsibility and people should follow what their requirements are, and that's to make sure that they look after their children and they're fed. I accept that argument fully. But in the end, if a child's not fed, then they're the victim of circumstances often beyond their control. So they are the factors that need to be weighed up.
But
so
do
would you
you
prefer a more targeted approach where schools get to choose how they spend perhaps some sort of social assistance money?
Well, we might delve into all that. All I'd sort of say is that we've been supportive of a few actions that have taken place with extended fruit in schools. We've been supportive of what Fonterra's been doing, and we've given money as Kids Can. So they're all examples of where we've worked on that issue.
Would you have any issues or concerns if Simon Lusk had been brought in to help with?
I don't have anything to do with Simon Lusk. You're really directing the wrong questions at the wrong person. Go and ask him. I don't really know the guy terribly well. I have no communication with him. And I think I once described him on a scale of 1 to 10 as -1. And pretty much stand by that view.
But if he was drafted in by the National Party, would you have a concern?
Pretty
about
amazed if he
that?
was.
On the Kids Can stuff, it seems a rather indirect way of doing business to put public money into a private charity, which then feeds stuff back to public schools. Do you think?
Well, I don't agree with that. I mean, Kids Can basically run a program, as I understand it, in association with Tip Top. So they provide toast in schools for breakfasts. So in a way, it's a partnership, and I can't see what's sort of wrong with that. I mean, the government, if it had to pay for all of that, would have to face a much larger bill. Kids Can also work with a number of other organisations to provide raincoats and shoes, and so the government really wants a sort of a form of a PPP. To me, seems to be logical.
Why not have it fully publicly funded and cut out the middleman?
Well, because it cost us more. Okay.
How would you characterise the budget?
It's a good budget. Very pleased to know. Oh, it's a good budget. It's been an easier budget than other years, I would suggest, because we've had a couple of zero budgets, and inevitably, because you have to spend more money on health and education just to stand still because of inflation and population changes, you have to find huge amounts of cash from other votes. And so this time we don't actually have to do that. Of course, there are some things we're trimming, but that's really at the kind of view of the minister that they should be trimmed. So it's an easier budget to put together. It indicates we're back in surplus, which has been a big commitment that we've tried to make as best we can. It's a very small surplus, but nevertheless we're there. And overall, I think if you look at the economic picture, the national government's delivering. I mean, we saw an unemployment rate of 6.2% last week. We can always argue whether the household labour for the survey bounces around a bit, but still it's a really good number. We've got growth at over 3%. I think Standard & Poor's last week had us in the top 10 of least risky countries. There's a lot of good economic data, and actually, my view of the SkyCity Convention Centres will be another thing welcomed by a lot of New Zealanders. Some will, of course, be opposed, a lot will be in favour, many will be quite ambivalent, but actually, in terms of overall economic growth, it'll be good for the economy. So there's lots of positive economic data coming out, and I think it's been a pretty strong period for the government this year.
Will the $800 million envelope you have when you spend all be spent?
Yes.
And more?
Oh, margins, but
Have you had any further contact with Winston Peters over the GCSB legislation, and have you got are you of a mind to make any changes to the draft we've seen so far?
and I haven't, in terms of the form, I've spoken, no. In terms of the latter, as I said last week, it was a genuine offer. I'm happy to work with New Zealand First to accommodate some of their issues if they make sense. I'm certainly happy to sit down and have a sincere discussion about those issues. And I can't say I'm confident that he'll vote for the legislation, but I reckon there's a reasonable chance he will.
Are
He
you
didn't
looking to
vote.
make the kind of change that he was looking for in terms of that three-person panel to monitor warrants?
Yeah, well, as I said last week, I mean, the early advice we had on that is it's potentially workable. It's not a deal breaker anyway.
Can I just ask you just on the Chinese sort of assignments, sort of cheating?
Yeah.
Does it raise any questions about the lack of any controls around foreign students in New Zealand?
I don't know if I could draw those conclusions on that yet. I mean, there's an investigation being undertaken by QA and others, so they'll need to go away and have a good look at that. I mean, what I would say is that the universities, are fiercely protective of their reputation, and rightfully so. And I think that's they've got a good reputation, and they're careful. They go through their own processes, and that is, I think I mean, when there was a tip off a couple of months ago, they did go and speak to various authorities, but there wasn't just enough information to follow through. So you've maybe done a better job than they have.
Would it transpire that they've had some sort of information going back several years, though? Would that concern you that no one's really sort of seriously dug into that at all?
Potentially, but I kind of need to see the context of everything they knew and why. There is always that risk, isn't there, in the modern world. Plagiarism, for want of a better term, is always possible when students put together assignments. It's not the first time you've seen stories of the universities actually picking that up. The issue here is that it's picked up through potentially another avenue as opposed to the work itself. So my understanding of the universities is that they've been concentrating on that issue. Stephen's here, so he might actually have if you want to chip in, feel free. But
Do you support the Reserve
see
Bank?
looming there and there.
I had just a couple of points on that, if I could. Firstly, I've spoken to NZQA this afternoon, and they have, and also with Education New Zealand, they are working closely with universities in New Zealand and Education New Zealand Ireland. It's important to note a couple of things. Firstly, the information raised 3 months ago was in relation to 2007. They evaluated it at the time. They didn't have enough evidence to proceed further. Unfortunately, Crown agencies are not allowed to go and conduct stings on assignment outfits, and so that's a bit tricky for them. But they couldn't ascertain anything in particular at the time. They kept the file open. The other thing I would note, actually, which is probably new information for you today, is that they've been back through and they were notified in 2009. They investigated at that time about a similar, if not the same company. And at that point, it was found that it was a legitimate, if you like, coaching service rather than somebody ghostwriting assignments. That was their assessment at the time. But as a result of the additional information that was published in the newspaper yesterday, we're going back over it again, and they are working with the universities on it. And again, if there's any further information that they can have. The final thing to note is that in 2011, we changed the law and for the first time made the concept of these commercial cheating services illegal in New Zealand. And so if there was to be a prosecution, it would be under this new legislation that we introduced in 2011. The reason we did that is that we made a number of changes in relation to education quality and international education to tighten things up. And that was one of the changes we introduced at the time in anticipation of potentially something like this occurring. I would say that as a result of that, we've had quite a significant tidy up of what we would call the less compliant end of the private education sector. And we've seen a number of institutions leave the market as a result of that. It's a constant battle because there's always people prepared to flout the rules.
Are you confident that how NZQA's handled this all the way up to including informing you about what have been uncovered?
No, I was very disappointed that they didn't inform me at the time. They spoke to me today. They actually told me today that they'd considered informing the minister, but decided that it just wasn't strong enough at that point to inform the minister. So we had a discussion about that, and they have accepted that perhaps in the future that they would definitely inform the minister of something like this. And I would say they're normally pretty good at that, but I just think they made the wrong call at this point.
How hard was it to work out that something that calls itself assignment for you was up to no good?
Well, I think that's a reasonably, Dr. Small, a reasonably interesting point that you make. But they did actually have a look at them, and I'm assuming that they would have realised that was a reasonably straightforward inference that you could make, and therefore they would hold themselves out, I understand, as a coaching service. Basically the accusation is that they've crossed the line to a ghostwriting service, and that's what's being investigated.
The real clue would be if they had written in there, there's an assignment written for you, that might be slightly more.
Yeah, it's a bit of a grey line, isn't it? Helping someone with their work and writing a point.
Prime Minister, did you support the Reserve Bank's intervention in the currency, given you previously said it doesn't work?
Yeah, look, they've always had the legal right to do that. They've done that before, and if they deem that to be the point at which, under their rules, it made sense, then yes. But if you're asking me whether I believe intervention turns around the direction of the currency, I stand by everything I've said, it definitely does not.